In this video, we'll study about the seventh cranial nerve, the facial nerve. The facial nerve consists of a motor and a sensory root, and the sensory root is also known as the nervus intermedius. So now we'll see the functional components of the facial nerve. So first component is the branchiomotor fibers. So the branchiomotor fibers, they supply the muscles which are developed from the second branchial arch or pharyngeal arch. The second component is the preganglionic secretomotor fibers for the submandibular, sublingual, lacrimal glands and the glands of the soft palate and the nasal cavity. It also contains the fibers of taste from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue and from the soft palate. Then it also carries the cutaneous somatosensory fibers from the concha of the auricle, and they are probably conveyed by the facial nerve. Next we'll see the deep origin or the nuclear origin. So first is the motor nucleus. So this is the motor nucleus of the facial nerve. It is situated in the caudal part of the pons below and in front of the abductor nerve nucleus. Below and front of the abductor nerve nucleus. The motor nucleus represent the special visceral efferent column or branchial efferent column. So it represents the following nuclear subgroups. It has a lateral group, intermediate group and medial group. The lateral group supplies the buccal musculature and the buccinator muscle. The intermediate group supplies the orbicularis oculi, the muscles of the forehead and the upper face. The medial group again subdivided into dorsomedial and ventromedial. The dorsomedial supplies the auricular muscles and the occipitofrontalis muscle. The ventromedial group supplies the platysma. The fibers from the motor nucleus passes dorsomedial towards the caudal end of the abductor nerve nucleus, then turn rostrally superficial to the nucleus, occupying the facial colliculus at the floor of the fourth ventricle. At the cranial end of the abductor nerve nucleus, the fibers bend abruptly downwards and forwards, forming an internal genu, and emerges at the lower border of the pons through the motor root. The next nuclear connection is the superior salivatory nucleus. The superior salivatory nucleus is situated dorsolateral to the caudal part of the motor nucleus of the facial nerve. It represents the general visceral efferent column, and it gives origin to the preganglionic secretomotor or parasympathetic fibers which emerges through the sensory root. The next nuclear component is the upper part of the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. It represents the special visceral afferent and also the general visceral afferent column. It receives the taste sensation from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue via the cauda tympani nerve and from the soft palate through the greater petrosal nerve. The next nuclear component is the upper part of the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So this possibly receives the cutaneous sensation from the auricle through the auricular branch of the vagus, and the cell bodies of these fibers are located in the genicular ganglion of the facial nerve. Next we'll see the central connection. The corticonuclear fibers of the opposite side. So corticonuclear fibers of the opposite side They control the activity of that part of the motor nucleus which supplies the muscles of the lower part of the face. So the lower part of the nucleus supplies the lower part of the face, which is controlled by the corticonuclear fibers of the opposite side. The part of the motor nucleus which supplies the muscles of the forehead and the eyelid is controlled by the corticonuclear fibers of both sides. Next we'll see about the superficial origin. Both motor root and the sensory root, they are attached to the lower border of the pons between the olive and the inferior cerebellar peduncle. The motor root is large and lies on the medial side of the sensory root. The vestibulocochlear nerve is situated just lateral to the sensory root. Sometimes the sensory root or the nervus intermedius is found to emerge along the vestibulocochlear nerve and gradually inclines to join the facial nerve in the internal acoustic meatus. Next we'll see the course and the relations. The course of the facial nerve is divided by the stylomastoid foramen. So this is the stylomastoid foramen. So this divides the course of the facial nerve into intracranial, intrapetrous part and extracranial part. So first we'll see the intracranial and the intrapetrous part from the brainstem. So this is the brainstem. From the brainstem, both the roots of the facial nerve, the motor and the sensory root, they accompanied by the vestibulocochlear nerve and passes laterally and forward and enter the internal acoustic meatus. Here it is accompanied by the labyrinthine artery. In the meatus, the motor root lodges in a groove on the anterosuperior surface of the vestibulocochlear nerve and the sensory root intervenes between them. At the bottom of the meatus, both the roots of the facial nerve unite to form the trunk of the facial nerve which enters the bony facial canal. In the facial canal, at first the nerve passes laterally above the vestibule of the internal ear and reaches the medial wall of the epitympanic part of the tympanic cavity where it bends backward forming a genu which is the external genu. At the genu, the facial nerve presents an asymmetric swelling which is known as the genicular ganglion, which contains the cell bodies of the pseudo-unipolar sensory neurons. From the genu, the nerve passes backwards and downwards and lodges in the bony canal above the promontory and the fenestra vestibuli and reaches the medial wall of the adductus to the mastoid antrum. Here, the nerve is related above with the bulging of the lateral semicircular canal. Finally, the nerve passes vertically downward along the posterior wall of the tympanic cavity and leaves the temporal bone through the stylomastoid foramen. Now we'll see the extracranial part. At it exists from the stylomastoid foramen, the facial nerve changes the direction. It passes forward superficial to the styloid process of the temporal bone and it pierces the posteromedial surface of the parotid gland. Within the gland, the nerve runs forward for about 1 centimeter superficial to the retromandibular vein and the external carotid artery. Then it divides into temporofacial and cervicofacial trunk. The temporofacial trunk it turns abruptly upward and divides into temporal and zygomatic branches. The cervicofacial trunk, it passes downward and forward and subdivides into buccal, marginal and cervical branches. The 5 terminal branches radiate like a goose foot through the anterior border of the gland and supplies the facial muscle. Thus, such a branching pattern is known as the pes anserinus. Now we'll see the points for special importance. The facial nerve presents two genu. One is the internal genu. So this is the internal genu within the pons around the cranial end of the abducer nerve nucleus, and you have an external genu containing the cell bodies of the sensory neurons in the medial wall of the epitympanic part of the tympanic cavity. From the brainstem to the terminal distribution, the facial nerve changes direction 5 times, forward and lateralward, then backward, downward and forward. The stylomastoid foramen lies about 2 cm deep to the middle of the anterior border of the mastoid process. In a newborn, the stylomastoid foramen lies at the surface of the mastoid bone, since the mastoid process grows about the 2nd year after birth. Therefore, a skin abscess behind the auricle is incised carefully in a child in order to avoid injury to the facial nerve. Next, we'll see the branches of communication. In the internal acoustic meatus, it communicates with the vestibulocochlear nerve. At the genicular ganglia, it communicates with the pterygopalatine ganglion through the greater petrosal nerve. The greater petrosal nerve arises from the genicular ganglion and leaves the tympanic cavity through the hiatus for the greater petrosal nerve in the tegmen tympani. On reaching the foramen lacerum below the trigeminal ganglion, the greater petrosal nerve joins with the deep petrosal nerve from the sympathetic plexus around the internal carotid artery, and this forms the nerve of the pterygoid canal. And the nerve of the pterygoid canal appears in the pterygopalatine fossa and joins with the pterygopalatine ganglion. The greater petrosal nerve convey the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers or secretomotor fibers to the lacrimal gland and the glands of the nasal mucous membrane and the soft palate. It also conveys the taste fibers from the soft palate. The preganglionic fibers are relayed in the cells of the pterygopalatine ganglion. The postganglionic fibers reach the lacrimal gland after passing successively through the zygomatic and the lacrimal nerve, and those fibers for the glands of the soft palate and the nasal mucosa, they pass through the greater and the lesser palatine nerve. The taste fibers from the soft palate pass successfully through the lesser palatine nerve, the pterygopalatine ganglion without interruption, the nerve of the pterygoid canal, and then the greater petrosal nerve, and ends as a peripheral process of the sensory neurons of the genicular ganglion. It communicates with the aortic ganglion by a branch which joins with the lesser petrosal nerve. It communicates with the sympathetic plexus around the middle meningeal artery by a branch known as the external petrosal nerve. In the facial canal, it communicates with the auricular branch of the vagus nerve through which the facial nerve possibly conveys the cutaneous sensation from the concha. Below the stylomastoid foramen, it communicates with the glossopharyngeal nerve, vagus nerve, auriculotemporal nerve and great auricular nerves. Behind the ear, it communicates with the lesser occipital nerve. In the face, it communicates with the branches of the trigeminal nerve. While the motor supply of the muscles of the face is derived from the facial nerve, the proprioceptive impulses from the facial muscle are conveyed centrally by the trigeminal nerve. In the neck, it communicates with the transverse cervical cutaneous nerve. Next, we'll see the branches of distribution. In the facial canal, it gives rise to two branches. The nerve to stapedius. It arises from the facial nerve opposite the pyramidal eminence and supplies the stapedius muscle. The paralysis of the stapedius produces hyperacusis. The next branch is the cauda tympani nerve. It arises from the facial nerve about 6 millimeters above the stylomastoid foramen. It conveys the taste fibers from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue except the circumvallate papillae, and it also conveys the preganglionic secretomotor fibers for the submandibular and the sublingual glands, and the cauda tympani nerve represents the pretraumatic branch of the first branchial arch. In this picture, so this is the facial nerve in the facial canal. So this is the nerve to the stapedius, and here you can see the cauda tympani nerve. The cauda tympani nerve passes forward and upward accompanied by the stylomastoid artery in a separate bony canal and appears in the posterior wall of the tympanic cavity at the posterior canaliculus for the nerve, and it is situated behind the tympanic membrane. And the nerve passes forward between the fibrous and the mucous layers of the tympanic membrane at the junction of the pars flaccida and pars tensa and crosses the medial side of the handle of the malleus. It leaves the tympanic cavity through the anterior canaliculus for the nerve, which is situated at the medial end of the petrotympanic fissure. Here, the nerve is accompanied by the anterior ligament of the malleus and the anterior tympanic branch of the maxillary artery. So, in this picture, you can see this is the cauda tympani nerve. The cauda tympani nerve then passes downward and forward in the infratemporal fossa under cover of the lateral pterygoid muscle, and it crosses the medial side of the spine of the sphenoid bone and joins at an acute angle the posterior border of the lingual nerve. So this is the lingual nerve. So it joins the lingual nerve at its posterior border at an acute angle, through which the fibers of the cauda tympani nerves are distributed. In the infratemporal fossa, the cauda tympani nerve is related laterally with the middle meningeal artery. Then you have the roots of the auriculotemporal nerve, and then you have the inferior alveolar nerve. Then it is related medially to the tensor veli palatini muscle. Medially, it is also related to the auditory tube. In front, it is related to the trunk of the mandibular nerve with the otic ganglion. The cauda tympani nerve provides a communicating branch to the otic ganglion, which probably forms an alternative route of taste sensation from the tongue. Below the stylomastoid foramen, it gives rise to three branches. First is the posterior auricular nerve. It passes upward and backward behind the auricle and supplies the intrinsic muscles of the auricle of the cranial surface and the auricularis posterior and the occipital belly of the occipitofrontalis muscle. Then it gives rise to the nerve to the posterior belly of the digastric muscle, and it also gives rise to the nerve to the stylohyoid muscle. Sometimes the nerve to the posterior belly of the digastric and the nerve to the stylohyoid muscle, they arise as a common trunk. In the face, it gives rise to the 5 terminal branches. The temporal branch, it passes upward and forward in front of the auricle and crosses the zygomatic arch and supplies the intrinsic muscles of the lateral surface of the auricle, the auricularis anterior and superior muscle, the upper part of the orbicularis oculi muscle, the frontalis muscle and the corrugator superciliae muscle. The zygomatic branch runs along the zygomatic arch and supplies the lower part of the orbicularis oculi muscle. The buccal branch consists of superficial and deep branches. The superficial branch supplies the procerus muscle and the deep branch subdivides into upper and the lower set. The upper buccal branch, it supplies the zygomaticus major, the zygomaticus minor, then the levator anguli oris muscle and the levator labii superioris muscle and the levator labii alicunaceae muscle. The lower buccal branch passes below the parotid duct and supplies the buccinator and the orbicularis oris muscle. The marginal mandibular branch appears first in the neck, then it curves upward and forward across the lower border of the mandible at the antero-inferior angle of the masseter muscle and appears in the face after crossing superficial to the facial artery and the vein. It supplies the risorius, the depressor anguli oris muscle, the depressor labii inferioris muscle and mentalis muscle. The cervical branch appears in the anterior triangle of the neck. It passes through the apex of the parotid gland and supplies the platysma muscle. Next is the tracing of the constituent fibers of the facial nerve. The branchiomotor fibers arising from the motor nucleus passes successfully through the motor root, the trunk of the facial nerve and supplies the stapedius muscle opposite to the pyramidal eminence, and the rest are distributed below the stylomastoid foramen. Second, the preganglionic secretomotor fibers for the lacrimal gland and the glands of the soft palate and the nasal mucosa arising from the superior salivatory nucleus and possibly lacrimatory nucleus also. It passes successfully through the sensory root, the trunk of the facial nerve, then the greater petrosal nerve and then the nerve of the pterygoid canal. Then they are relayed into the cells of the pterygopalatine ganglion. The postganglionic fibers for the lacrimal gland passes through the zygomatic and the lacrimal nerve and reach the target organ. And those for the glands of the soft palate and the nasal mucosa, they descend through the greater and the lesser palatine nerves. The preganglionic fibers for the submandibular and the sublingual gland arises from the superior salivatory nucleus and they pass in succession through the sensory root, the facial nerve trunk and the cauda tympani nerve and joins with the lingual nerve, and then they terminate in the submandibular ganglion which acts as a relay station. The postganglionic fibers from the ganglion supply directly the submandibular gland and reach the sublingual gland through the lingual nerve. The taste fibers from the anterior two-thirds of the tongue passes successfully through the lingual nerve the cauda tympani nerve, and the trunk of the facial nerve, and then it ends as the peripheral process of the pseudo unipolar sensory neurons of the genicular ganglion. The taste fibers from the soft palate pass in succession through the lesser palatine nerve, the pterygopalatine ganglion without interruption, the nerve of the pterygoid canal and the greater petrosal nerve, and terminate as the peripheral process of the sensory neurons of the genicular ganglion. The central processes of the genicular ganglion pass through the trunk, the sensory root of the facial nerve, and they terminate in the pons in the upper part of the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. A fresh relay of the fibers from the solitary nucleus crosses the midline and ascends to the opposite side as the solitariothalamic tract, which terminates in the ventral posteromedial nucleus of the thalamus. Final relay from the thalamus is projected to the lower part of the postcentral gyrus, the area number 312, for the perception of taste sensation. The cutaneous sensation from the concha of the auricle are possibly conveyed first by the auricular branch of the vagus, then through the trunk of the facial nerve, and then through the genicular ganglion where the cell bodies are located. The central processes of the ganglion cell passes through the trunk and the sensory root of the facial nerve, and they make synaptic connection with the upper part of the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. In the herpes zoster affecting the concha, the viral lesion is found to involve the genicular ganglion of the facial nerve. Next we'll see the applied anatomy of the facial nerve. The facial nerve lesion may be supranuclear. So above the nucleus, supranuclear lesion. It involves the upper motor neurons of the corticobulbar and the corticoreticular fibers of the facial nerve nucleus. This is caused by the occlusion of the blood vessels supplying the internal capsule or the motor cortex. So this results in the impairment or the loss of movement of the lower part of the face of the opposite side, but the upper part of the face escape. This is due to the bilateral cortical control of the upper part of the motor neuron. Next we'll see the nuclear lesion. A lesion in the pons may involve the motor nucleus of the facial nerve along with the abductor nerve nucleus, around which the motor root makes a loop. This results in the lower motor neuron paralysis, producing loss of movements of all facial muscles of the affected side, same side, associated with the internal strabismus or internal squint due to the involvement of the lateral rectus muscle of the eyeball due to the lesion of the abductor nerve. Sometimes a pontine lesion affects the pyramidal tract and the facial nerve nucleus, and it is expressed as the Millard-Gubler syndrome, which is characterized by contralateral hemiplegia and ipsilateral facial palsy. Next we'll see the infranuclear lesion. A lesion interrupting the peripheral part of the facial nerve is known as Bell's palsy, which when complete produces the lower motor neuron paralysis of all the facial muscles of the affected side with the abolition of both voluntary and reflex movements. The manifestation of the peripheral injury vary according to the site of the involvement. If the lesion is at the internal acoustic meatus, so if the lesion is at the internal acoustic meatus, It produces Bell's palsy and deafness due to the involvement of the vestibulocochlear nerve. So next we'll see when there is a lesion at the genu. A lesion at the genu produces decreased lacrimation and the submandibular salivary secretion, reduced taste sensation on the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, hyperacusis due to the involvement of the nerve to the stapedius, along with the signs of the Bell's palsy on the affected side. During recovery from an injury proximal to the genicular ganglion, some regenerating salivary fibers may pass through the greater petrosal nerve and reach the pterygopalatine ganglion. So this is manifested by paroxysmal lacrimation during eating, and it is known as the crocodile tears syndrome. Next we'll see a lesion of the facial nerve between the genu and the pyramidal prominence or eminence produces all the manifestation as described above without the disturbance of lacrimation and the taste sensation from the soft palate. Next we'll see an injury below the stylomastoid foramen. So an injury of the facial nerve below the stylomastoid foramen produces Bell's palsy without affecting other function. In a typical paralysis, the face becomes asymmetrical and you can see the following manifestation on the affected side. So what are the manifestation you can see on the affected side or ipsilateral side? The transverse wrinkles on the forehead disappears and the eyebrow droops. Then the palpebral fissure is wider than that of the normal side due to the unopposed action of the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. The patient is unable to close his eyelid and the tears roll over the cheek. The corneal reflex is disturbed, which may culminate into corneal ulcer and blindness. When an attempt is made to close the eyelid, the eyeball on the affected side may be seen to roll upward. This is known as the Bell's phenomenon. The nasolabial fold disappear, the ala nasi does not move and the tip of the nose is deviated to the sound side. During smiling, the angle of the mouth remains motionless on the affected side, whereas the other angle moves upward and laterally. This makes the oral fissure a triangular in outline. Due to the paralysis of buccinator muscle, the food accumulates in the vestibule of the mouth and occasionally dribbles out between the paralyzed lips. Since the lips on the affected side cannot move, the pursing of the whistle is disturbed and the labial speech may be affected. The Bell's palsy belongs to flaccid type of lower motor neuron paralysis and may be caused by sudden exposure to cold, middle ear infection, fractures, tumors or from other disorders. 75% of all facial nerve lesions fall into this group. Reaction of regeneration appears after a week or 10 days depending upon the extent of damage. In majority of cases, partial or complete recovery occurs in 2 to 8 weeks.